And good morning, Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Our great friend Dave Petzo's with us. The Petzo Center, Petzo Financial. Boy, a lot going on today in the world of business. It's funny, we have you on Tuesday instead of Monday last week. And on Wednesday or Tuesday afternoon, they announced the big merger between Time Warner and DirecTV. And then there they go, our friends at Channel 7. There he is, Dave Petzo on there. So as this merger looks like it's going to happen, the Justice Department saying it's okay, the court saying it's okay. What does this mean for people that, whether they have satellite, whether they have cable? Because this covers a huge footprint.
It does. And what I think we're going to see is that we don't know what this means totally, because this opens the door to other possibilities, right? Doors that were closed, right? We're now seeing bidding for Fox assets from other than Disney. Remember, Disney about 6 months ago had announced that they were going to buy a bunch of assets from Sky and Fox, and now there's a bidding war.
They agreed to come on and take over those assets. The Fox footprint would shrink to FS1 and the Fox News Channel. But now you have Comcast jumping in, which also owns NBC.
Correct.
So you take a look at this, and if you're the NFL, maybe you're a little worried because you're not going to have four people, major networks, bidding for your properties, but you could have Comcast Fox or Disney Fox.
Exactly.
How does this benefit the viewer?
Right. If there's enough competition, because we're cutting the wire, right? I mean, all these things are available. It's like you tell me to go watch Billionaire, and if I want to, I don't have to go get
Billions.
Sorry.
Come
billions.
On,
I got to get this right.
You are so hip. It's billions.
Yeah, right. Okay, I may be hip on some things, but when it comes to that, no, I am not. Anyway, the billions, and you can do that. I don't have to go get a cable. And this is not long ago. I'd have to sign up for Dish or cable or what have you. And now you don't. You just go on your iPad and you hook up. You get Hulu and others.
CBS is going into the streaming business. Yes.
Correct. And it's all changing, and very much, Kevin. So I think in a sense this is a whole lot of hullabaloo about not having competition, because the competition can go right by all of the distributors that they used to be were the gatekeepers, if you will. So merging the gatekeepers, if you will, does not bother me at all at this point.
You take a look at the media business, and it's so strange, Dave Petzo, as someone who's the gentleman that sold the plumbing company that's your buddy? Dan
Long.
Okay, and he's written a book, and he was honored by the White House.
Yeah, from the outhouse to the White House.
From the outhouse to the White House. He swears by the power of radio and spoken word. And
he does.
And he's so right. And I understand that things have changed. There's increased competition. And you have media stocks that take a beating all the time. Mm-hmm. And you have one company that just emerged from bankruptcy, the biggest company in bankruptcy. And you think to yourself, on one hand, they're so impactful, they're so effective, and yet they don't get the love, the respect on Wall Street that they promised their shareholders years ago that they would deliver.
There is it's interesting. Media assets are very odd because of the write-offs and things like that. They're difficult to value the way we classically value stocks as, say, a percentage of earnings, right? Or since they don't have very much in the way of earnings. The great value seems to be drawn out of these assets when they merge, because other people in that industry see the value of what, let's just say, of having the NFL or having this sports network or even some of the ones that you and I may not watch, but there are people watching. So all of these networks have great value, but only to the people in the media. And so other people, that's where the value tends to come out, not because they have great cash flow earnings. They have good cash flow typically, but not great earnings.
Well, speaking of this, now you've got the FCC looking at getting rid of ownership limits. So in markets 1 through 75, you could have up to 8 FM properties, unlimited AM properties. 75 and over, and this market is 95. You could have unlimited people owning stations, but you go back to public service and what radio is, and you see that going away.
It can. I think you're right. We have to actually open it up a little bit, Kevin, because as you know, without a whole bunch of stations here, you guys can't go do the Boise Music Festival like you do. You can't do big projects and keep things up, if you will. You can't keep them all alive. You need to cross-pollinate. And so the idea that radio is the same and everybody's making money, we know that's not true as the big boys are all disintegrating. And I think we need a balance, right, that allows a market, a group to have more so that they can survive in a more competitive environment. But at the same time, you're quite right. We need to have a public message as well. We're here to serve the public. And if we don't, they stop listening anyway. But before that, they still have to be getting some propaganda message the way the national mainstream media is.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and whether or not, especially with the Trump administration, you could see those caps go eventually away and you could have no competition. You could have
Not good.
Right, and having worked for one of the company, actually both companies, one emerging from bankruptcy and one currently in bankruptcy, they made a lot of poor decisions involving debt that continue to impact. Anyway, that's a little too inside. So oil prices are suffering. We've got this Chinese-American trade war heating up.
Are you worried about oil prices suffering? Did I catch that right?
I'm a little happy. I'm happy that hopefully we'll get some relief at the pump because, as a person of the people, today we say person of the people, not man of the people.
Okay.
I'm worried about these oil prices continuing to rise, gas prices continuing to rise. And I'll tell you, if I would ever run for office on the Petso ticket, it would be to somehow alleviate the high cost of energy here in the state of Idaho.
Well, we are getting some relief out there. There's no doubt about that there's more oil that is, if you will, they're talking about pumping more. I don't think oil prices come down a lot on babble from OPEC. That's headline news. It may move oil prices for a day or for an hour.
Which you're a big fan of.
Yes, right. Yeah, I think everybody should invest by the headlines. And so again, you kind of have this circumstance where they are going to be pumping more because prices are up there and they can do well. Saudi Arabia is doing well. They're doing a lot better than when oil's at $30 and when it's at 60 plus. So obviously, and as I've always said, Kevin, we have to have a balance there of where prices aren't too low and it keeps the energy companies in our own country from digging enough holes and putting us again energy dependent. We've become energy independent. It's a huge boon to our country, to production, to jobs, and bringing manufacturing jobs into this country is the idea that we can drill holes and make money, and also the federal government's not standing in the way with the Trump administration of drilling and if you will, monetizing those assets.
Yeah, but there's no relief for the workers. No relief for Pat from Middleton when he's doing his landscaping business.
That's correct. Well, hopefully we're coming down a little bit. I think they are. Prices are coming down a little bit. But
they
again,
aren't where they were
fear,
a year ago.
Like you said, there's a great relief that energy prices are collapsing at this point.
Well, we hope.
I wouldn't call the collapsing. We're only off of 70 down to mid-60s. So I think this is a perfect place. It's a good place for us to be. And yes, nobody wants to pay more for anything. I wish food was free, energy was free, all those things. But they're not. And it is a good thing that we drill in this country and that the producers are profitable, and so they do keep drilling.
It sounds like you're going socialist.
Yeah.
That you want food for free.
It just sounds good, doesn't it? I mean, who doesn't want a filet for free?
At Bloomberg, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, at Bloomberg and other places, they actually have free cafeterias and stuff. You go in,
yeah.
They have breakfast and stuff, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, we don't at our office. We don't have a free cafeteria.
That's the free market. That's the capitalistic. Yes, you pay as you go. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Dave Petso joining us here. Locally, anything going on?
No, Kevin, it's not. Everything just seems to be rolling along nicely. Obviously, the town is booming. It was so busy here. Again, controversial parades and all that aside, there were so many different activities going on in Boise this past weekend, and there will be next weekend, and so on. It's a happening place. We live where everybody wants to be, and it's particularly fun in the summer here.
Well, not fun with the traffic. However, on one hand, you have the X Games coming into town, and then you have the Pride Fest. Then you have some salute to veterans and such. You're right, the area continues to grow, but the housing prices continues to be a problem. Over the weekend, your friends at Channel 7, actually over the week, they aired a couple stories about the lack of affordable housing for seniors. This challenge continues to climb and climb and climb. Could that impact the economy, or could perhaps the ever-rising interest rates have an impact on cooling the ever-present, ever-fast Treasure Valley economy?
The answer is yes and yes and yes. It always can. It does have an impact. The point of raising interest rates is to slow things down just a little bit so we don't get overheated. It's also, in this case, though, it shows that the economy is growing well, and so we can afford rate increases. Kevin, we've got to get back to normal. It's a good news, bad news thing, but if you have interest rates that are so low, what happens if we have a crisis, right? We really need to be able to stimulate the economy. If interest rates are at zero, then there's not much we can do, right? The Fed is out of bullets, so to speak. By raising interest rates, it also gives us those bullets back. So if there is some kind of a financial crisis, we have the ability to, as normal, to go back in and cut those rates so we can help stimulate the economy. That's the Fed getting back to normal is a really, really good thing. I don't want to see rates go too high. You're right. It can really push back. It's a good news, bad news. Good that we can, good that we need to because the economy is so good. But you don't want them too high where it stifles it and even possibly sends us into a recession.
Any thoughts on a recession?
I think very unlikely. In fact, I do have a thought. Do we have another minute before we got a break here? Okay. Bernanke comes out. And again, I'm kind of a fan of Bernanke. I thought he did a fine enough job, but I don't know why these guys come out and decide to throw darts at the economy or whatever else it is and take wild guesses. You know, Bernanke, okay, he's a smart guy and all that, but nobody knows the future. And he came out last week and actually literally said that we were going to have a Wile E. Coyote moment within the U.S. economy in 2020. I don't know why. He didn't cite any reason other than if with interest rates rising, or in other words, them being overly accommodative, him included, him particularly, and now having interest rates rising, that they were going to raise rates too much and stifle the economy. In other words, it's just a simple, wild guess. The economy is doing well, and he gave really no data as to why. So I find that to be, I don't know, really crappy behavior, frankly. It's just a guess, and I don't care who you are. Economists can't even get a coin flip of whether interest rates are going higher or lower over the next 6 months. The coin flip has won over the last 30 years over the thought of economists. So I don't know why we are trying to make predictions of what's going to happen in 2020, but Bernanke coming out and saying that is really, in my opinion, foolish behavior by him.
All right, more with Dave Petzo next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And good morning, Dave Petzo with us here at KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to Mick in Kuna. Good morning, Mick.
Hi, how you doing?
Great. What can we do for you?
So, well, I'm wondering whether or not the Fed or whoever it is that does it, during the Obama administration, they monetized the debt, printing an awful lot of money that's backed by nothing. Is there any plan to draw any of those dollar bills back in, to have them destroyed, to reestablish where the dollar bill ought to be as opposed to where they pushed it to?
Well, as far as the interest rates and as far as the bonds go, what they did was they bought back so many bonds, trillions of dollars worth, right? So the federal balance sheet exploded to far and away the largest it's ever been. Now, what they've been doing for quite some time is they've been tapering or getting rid of the QE. So QE 1, 2, and 3. They're now, instead of buying bonds, they've stopped a long time ago, and in fact, I think it's over a year ago now, they started to sell those bonds back to the market. They're doing it in a very measured way, not a big chunk of it, but it's every single month, and I believe they're up to $50 billion now per month this quarter. I think it goes to there. It might be 40 now, and then 50 next quarter. And then after that, that'll be the steady rate until the balance sheet is, like a gazillion years from now, is back to normal. It'll take a long time. They just don't want to shock the market with this. And so far, the market not only hasn't been shocked, it's been easily absorbed out there, and it's done very well, contrary to, once again, the doomsdayers knowing the world was going to end.
Okay, thank you for that information. I appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome.
All right, Mick, thank you. It's been a while since we've talked about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Where are we with that?
We are now, one of my favorite things. Let's just continue to don't touch Social Security so that it goes bankrupt, and that's exactly what we've now crossed over. I think it was 2 weeks ago, Kevin, that we crossed over where Social Security is now. We're theoretically dipping into that trust fund, which of course doesn't exist because Congress couldn't keep their mitts off of it. So now we are in deficit literally every day on Social Security. We do not have enough workers putting in money for all the retirees that are out there. And so the problem will continue to grow. Longevity is a problem in our country. It's a blessing, of course. It's a first world problem. Gee whiz, people are living too long. They're too healthy, doggone it. It's a wonderful thing to have, but it is causing problems for Medicare and for Social Security. And Medicare is in serious trouble, of course, Medicaid as well, but they won't touch it. They won't deal with it. I'll never forget when George Bush stood up there at his State of the Union, and the Democrats just simply said, "Moo," and started booing when he's talked about dealing with Social Security. I don't know what the answer is, except I think that they just simply want it to implode, and then they've got to step in, raise taxes, and take over even more of the economy.
The fascinating part about Social Security, though, is you've got the boomers that are the second largest age cohort. Then you've got the millennials, and in between you have the smaller generation. So, while you have the smaller generation, Generation X, that you don't have as many workers as you do in the other two, eventually the boomers will go away. Then you're going to have a much smaller, older population.
Correct.
Being hopefully funded by a huge, larger cohort behind them.
Yeah, you would think. But again, we have a situation where immigration is, frankly, it seems to me to be out of control. We don't have any idea. People just show up on the border, and if you have a kid, I'm not trying to make a political statement here. I'm just simply saying that immigration is one of the reasons why this country continues to grow. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's certainly healthier than what's going on in China or Japan, where they have way too few young people. But at the same time, the idea that we have out of control, we don't know what's going on, who's coming in. Kevin, maybe the politics of the whole thing changes as you import a whole bunch of people that think that a large centralized government is a way better idea because that's where they come from.
Right, and Pat Buchanan made that point 10 or 20 years ago, and you see that with the millennial generation where they think socialism is good. They think that having more government control, less freedom is essential because they've been raised by the nanny state. However, you take a look at whether it's Idaho or Iowa, that we subsidize these folks coming in. Mm-hmm. They get the medical, we pay for that. They get the education, we pay for that. So if you're a business dependent on these folks, it's a pretty good deal. And you have an effective lobbying group called the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that wants immigration reform. The challenge is if I'm, overtaxed as an American citizen, why should I be subsidizing a multinational corporation to pay for their workers?
Right, exactly. And it also changes all of society when people don't integrate into society. We see what's going on in Europe. It's a very big problem. And when we come in and we say, whatever language you have, we'll speak that for you. You don't have to integrate into our society. That doesn't help people at all in the long run. It helps them to simply remain imprisoned with your own system because they can't do anything functionally in your society if you can't speak the language and you don't have an education. So it's a very rough situation immigration-wise. To me, it's become very political instead of trying to come up with good answers.
And more with Dave Pezzo here as we look at all of our money and finances and such. Your thoughts on what to expect in the upcoming months of the doldrum days of summer?
I would expect our focus to continue, unfortunately, to be on trade. Instead of just letting this play out, it'll be in the news every single day. Because the economy is booming, Kevin. It's just something to keep your eyes on and understand that the unemployment rate is incredibly low, and the underemployment rate is incredibly low as well. We also have GDP that this past week, almost all the economists, although many had before, but the ones that had been holding out below 4% are now upping their estimates for GDP for the balance of the year to get in over 4%. We haven't seen that in way over a decade. So this is a really strong time in the economy, and offsetting that, we got to find that negative news out there is going to be the trade talks, trade discussions. I think the United States is in a very powerful position, but it still will have a tendency to move markets in the doldrums of summer, particularly.
And fear of missing out?
Fear of missing, a good point. That's a good one. I like that, but I haven't seen that for a long, long time. And again, people who will, when we see that, then you can start worrying about it. But we have seen net outflows into you've heard me talk about this all the time. It's the most disrespected bull market that I've ever seen or heard of. Also, we're up 400% from the bottom. Doesn't matter. I think the market's blah, blah, blah. And people are sitting on cash. We're seeing net outflows from equities. So when we start seeing some actual net inflows, maybe I can start saying fear of missing out. But very valid point. People at some point are going to be afraid that they're missing out on this great boom, and it has been a great boom.
Dave Petzo, we always appreciate you. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Kevin. Thanks.
You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Kevin. Idaho State Police say people were killed.
And to my friend Pro-Life, hang on. I know you've been there. And Barb in Sunny Slope, hang on. We're going to get to you. Pro-Life, I know you've been very patient. Hang in there. Patience is a virtue. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Don't forget this Saturday, Boise Music Festival beginning at, 10 a.m., June 23rd, Expo, Idaho. Your chance to see Robin Thicke and all the big stars. Of course, the carnival. It's going to be a great time. And a week from tomorrow, God and Country. Expo, Idaho is for Boise Music Festival, Ford Idaho Center Amphitheater. That begins at 4 o'clock. Free fireworks, wonderful music, and a really inspirational speaker. We'll tell you more about that. And plus, you can hear the fireworks right here on your official God and Country station, KIDO Talk Radio. Back from Singapore, our man John Decker from the White House from Fox News Radio. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning to you, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Not bad. Now, I don't know if you were still in Singapore or not when we had the latest outburst at the White House press briefing. Last week was a doozy. We talked about it back and forth. It's never a dull moment, and I know you get tired of me asking this. Is it still a packed house?
Yeah, no, I don't get tired of anything you ask me. It's still a packed house every day, and I was not at that briefing. As you mentioned, I was coming back from Singapore, so was not there on that particular day. I believe that was last Thursday. But I've seen the video, so I know what you're referring to. I know the individual that had that back and forth with Sarah Sanders. And look, this is an issue that has not gone away for this administration, the issue of separating children from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border. And it's going to be in the news all this week probably, including today, of course, with the president tweeting about it this morning.
As a man who teaches, reports, a lawyer, worked for the Senate, God rest his soul, Senator Hines, you have a great perspective on things. Were you surprised at the return of Steve Bannon on the Sunday talk show circuit?
Well, that's up to the individual Sunday shows as to whether or not they want to book Mr. Bannon. I think he's sort of on the outs, so I don't know what kind of perspective he adds. It's not like he has insider knowledge of this White House. He doesn't. But that's up to the producers that book those shows as to who they want as their guests. And if they want Steve Bannon on there, then they'll get Steve Bannon, because I don't think he's being he has other things that are going on that would prevent him from being on those Sunday morning talk shows.
A great point there, but I think that was his first appearance since since leaving the White House. You had Kellyanne Conway making the point about the situation, and really the administration sees this as an issue that the Democrats in Congress have a problem with, and yet you have, when we're talking about what's going on the border, with these families being separated, you have prominent Republicans, most notably, on one hand, he's a golf buddy. On the other hand, he's a thorn in the side. Lindsey Graham saying the president could stop this policy right away. Do you expect this to be one of the topics covered this week at the White House, sir?
Well, it's going to be covered certainly during the White House press briefing, which is scheduled at 1:15 Eastern Time this afternoon. The president also set to go up to Capitol Hill tomorrow to meet with the entire Republican conference about this particular issue. I think the president recognizes this is not a good issue for him, a good issue for Republicans. You have very significant and influential members of the president's base, evangelicals, saying this is not a good policy. So I would not be surprised if by the end of the week you have a reversal on this policy of some sort.
John, let's talk about the other major news, the tariffs between our country and the Chinese country, the government and such. Is this a ploy, or can we expect industries to really be hit by this?
Well, I think that you're going to expect for the short term, industries in America, including the farm industry, impacted by these tariffs, because what happened was the president announced these tariffs on Friday, $50 billion of tariffs on Chinese goods. And what did the Chinese do? They retaliated with $50 billion of tariffs on U.S. goods, including some of our crops. And in addition to that, our plane industry is impacted by this, including Boeing. So in the short term, certainly American industry, American companies, American workers will be impacted by it, but perhaps it'll force both U.S. and Chinese trade negotiators to come to the negotiating table and find some sort of compromise, some sort of solution to end this, what can best be described as a trade war.
Now, John, not to get personal, were you working Friday at the White House?
I was working. Why is that? Why is that personal? Yeah, I was working Friday at the White House, as a matter of fact.
I was just going to say, what was it like when, we saw this drama on Fox and Friends, and I believe it was on Friday, when all of a sudden the president decides he's watching Fox and Friends. He says, I'm going to go out and hang out with Steve Doocy and Peter Doocy. And it was akin to his days working with the World Wrestling Entertainment thing, where people are covering him and it's just this free-for-all. And as someone who's covered presidents for years, worked in the Senate, this is, I don't know if this has ever happened where it's not a scripted thing. He just improvises all the time.
He does. So I was at the White House when that happened. When I arrived at the White House a little before 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday, I already saw some people gathered, sort of what's called you know where this is, the North Lawn television stand-up locations, because they read the president's tweet and they were waiting the president to come out from the West Wing. And indeed, he came out from the West Wing, and altogether he was outside on the North Lawn for about an hour. I'll tell you a story. It's kind of interesting. This is rare. The AP photo person who was here that day, a person that I know very well, he was here, and he was the only still photographer at the White House at that time. So it's very rare to have an exclusive at the White House. He had an exclusive at the White House as it relates to still photography. So he was in seventh heaven on Friday because of that.
Well, and as we've seen on television, there are a lot of cameras, both still and video, in that briefing room, set up just in case something happens. But again, I don't think I've ever seen an individual, a president, that seems more comfortable without a script, without a teleprompter, going back and forth with the press on his way to go see your colleagues, Steve and Peter Doocy.
That's exactly right. It's unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it. Nothing surprises me anymore. And what happened on Friday was certainly unusual. And I think people are thinking maybe it'll happen again. I think it was just a unique set of circumstances that led to that happening on Friday. But look, I think it could happen again. After all, members of the Fox family are here at the White House fairly regularly, and so if they happen to be on the North Lawn, don't be surprised if the president goes out there and tries to do an interview with them.
John Decker, we always appreciate your great work. Glad you're back safe from Singapore.
Thanks a lot. It's great to be back, and it's great to be on your show, too, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
See you, John.
Bye-bye.
Our great friend, John Decker. KIDO Talk Radio. We go from the White House to your house. Pro-Life joins us now with Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pro-Life. Thank you for your patience, sir. We really appreciate it.
Well, you were talking a long time ago about the children being taken away from their families down on the border. And there is a solution, and I don't know why it isn't even being implemented right now. I used to live down by the border, and I would see people come into the United States. They would capture them. They would take them within a half an hour, put them back on the other side of the border. Now, if families come across and they have children, I think they ought to fingerprint them, identify them, whatever, and put them back immediately. The families kept intact. I don't know why they want to keep them on our side.
Well, they do that to see if they have legitimate reasons to come into the country, because they're fleeing asylum. They're fleeing being persecuted. And the reason why they're doing that is it was during the Obama administration. If people said they were being persecuted, then you got a bigger open door into the United States of America. You weren't caught and then thrown back into the water.
Well, I understand that, but probably 90-some% of them are lying about they need asylum. And they need to just be able to somehow maybe have some of our people on the other side just playing like they're regular old Mexicans and go and talk to some of these people that are trying to get in here with an asylum and find out, how sincere they really are. I don't think we're doing that. I don't think we're proactive enough. But that's one of my solutions. Now, anyway, I was right there with Arvell at the gay parade.
Back there to your weekend with the gays.
Yeah. And I held a sign that said, "Be thankful your mother was not gay." Now,
how did that go over?
It went over pretty good. It makes them think. Now, this is going to surprise you. A former state senator came up to me and said, my mother had 2 children, and then she went gay. And then another
Wait a
woman,
minute. She had 2 children, and then she went gay.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Well, it isn't good, but it happens. And, and so then this Nicola Faber, that's probably why she's the way she is.
Well, we can't really use names, and, let's not speculate or get personal, so.
Well, okay. But anyway, then a woman yelled out from
And, by the way,
yeah,
Senator LaFavor will always talk, so I'm sure if she knows how to get a hold of you, she'll explain herself to you, not that she has to, but, again, we don't want to, let's not get personal here, so continue on,
okay.
please.
Okay, so then another woman, she looked like she was about at least 60 years old. She yelled out of the parade, "My mother had 5 children, and then she went gay." And, of course, she was one of the children. Okay, then somebody else said to me, because of that sign, "My mother's gay." Now,
apparently there are a lot of gay moms.
Yeah.
Having a gay old time. Oh, that's the Flintstones.
No, that's pretty terrible.
I don't know if we can say that anymore.
But anyway, a girl came off of the parade. I guess you could tell that I was telling them they're wrong, but I was a kindly grandpa, so she came up and said, "Can I give you a hug?" So I gave her a hug. She gave me a hug, and that was kind of weird. But anyway,
was she gay?
Obviously.
So you got a gay hug.
Yeah.
Was it any different than a regular hug?
Well, I don't know. How do you know?
Hugs are hugs.
Yeah, well, anyway, I really appreciate Arvell going down there. I admire him for standing up for what he believes.
So you had a good time, and you didn't, nothing happened.
Right. We were safe. Nobody was threatening us.
The gay police didn't have to protect you.
Yeah, and what's really sad, I think, is that the city of Boise has all those gay flags on all of the light poles all around the downtown. Those guys need to be unelected. They need to be totally opposed. Boise's going crazy. And so say you're moving to Idaho, just call the city council, the mayor, one of the councilmen, or all of them, send them a letter, tell them, "Listen, I'm going to move to Meridian. I'm going to go to Canyon County. I'm going to go to Gem County. I'm not living in Boise because you guys are way too sick liberal. And maybe they'll get some kind of an idea, but that's about all I got to tell you.
You're urging people to move out of Boise.
Yeah, and take it and just tell them I got a good business, but I'm putting it over on the Meridian side. I'm not being in your crazy city.
All right. Thank you very much, Pro-Life.
All right, we'll see you.
We'll see you. Barb, Sunny Slope, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you for your patience.
Good morning, Kevin. There were several things that I thought of with this immigration issue. One, you keep hearing people say, this is un-American, that we're separating the kids and the mothers and the parents. Well, I remember touring Ellis Island, and I remember hearing that they separated the kids and the parents if there was any problem at all. And sometimes they sent the children back if there was a disease, or a parent back and kept the kid, So this is not un-American. This is how we handled it years ago. Secondly, as you look at the pictures of Walmart where they're keeping these young children, which many of them are not all that young, you realize that took a long time to have carpenters and plumbers and all those people, contractors in, to create that building. In fact, I have an article back, I just looked it up this morning before I called, back from April of 2015, saying there were Walmarts closing for odd reasons down in Texas and in Oklahoma. And nobody was talking, and nobody was finding out what in the world the Walmarts were closing for. Well, obviously, this might have been the issue. They might have been building rooms and places for immigrants to be put when they come across the border, which means that they were doing this and planning this during the Obama administration, and, of course, with the plan that Hillary was going to be in, so it would have been continued then. So this is not something that Trump whipped off his head. This has been going on for a while, if they have been planning on putting, separating immigrants and putting children into, frankly, pretty nice quarters at Walmart. So it's really not Trump doing it. It's really a leftover from Obama.
Barb, thank you for the call. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO Talk Radio.
Attention doctors and nurses. Here's financial planner Jared Empey, here to talk about your finances. He's an advisor at Idaho Medical Association Financial Services. Jared, tell us what sort of financial situations you typically see.
Well, we work with all types of medical professionals throughout the state.
Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Pete in Mountain Home, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Yeah, Kevin, I think, and thanks to KIDO for giving us a voice from the conservative side of the spectrum. I think what's going on with this, the Democrats yapping about the children, is two things. First of all, you can't put kids in an adult jail. So when you catch the border crossers who are actually invaders, they're not immigrants, they're invaders, and you want to lock them up, well, you can't lock them up in adult jail because they got their kids. Well, you can't separate the kids. That's just so mean. So what they're trying to do is go back to the Obama administration, catch and release. And they want them to just disappear into the population, and that's your only other alternative if you're not going to separate them, and you're not going to put the kids in the same lockup with the adults. Oh well, just let them go and tell them they got to come back, and then you never see them again.
Exactly, and we've seen the consequences of that for years under Obama.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the Democrats. All this wailing about the poor children is simply the Democrats wanting to go back to that policy.
Well, so you support the president?
Oh, absolutely. Hey, if you don't want to be separated from your kids, don't come here illegally. Exactly. Don't commit a crime. I'm sorry.
Right.
If I go out and hold up a bank and I've got 4 kids, they don't let me go because I got 4 kids. They lock me up and I'm separated from the kids.
Pete, thank you for the call.
You bet. Thank you.
Tea Party Bob joins us now at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Miller, and how are you this fine Monday morning?
Living the dream.
Well, you're always living the dream. Just a few words here on the immigration. You know, President Trump's enforcing a law the Democrats put on the books and actually enforced themselves, but now they're claiming these outrageous cries of cruelty. What a sham with all these demonstrations. Either we have a nation of laws or we don't. You can't have it both ways. The Dems are complaining about the illegals being separated from their parents. I don't hear anyone talking about the number of legal residents being separated from their kids because of incarcerations for breaking the law. We have an estimated 21,000 American children that are put in foster homes every year because of the incarcerations. And that's according to the Department of HHS. That's about 60 a day compared to the 45 they're putting away now that are illegal. But you have to think about this in perspective. Should we make exceptions for the illegal aliens and not the American citizens? For the longest time, illegal immigration has been driven by single males from Mexico. In the last decade, it shifted to women, children, and family units from Central America. And we haven't confronted this kind of problem before.